If you change a man's diet, you change a man's ideology. So let me explain. I was vegan for 8 years. Um, and I thought I was going to be vegan forever. And that was the thing. My ideology was tied to this lifestyle, right? This lifestyle of eating a certain way of quote unquote ethically living, right? Living to a certain standard that at the time made sense to me and felt appropriate. And looking back now, maybe it was a little bit of like game on my part as well because it was like challenging the notions of masculinity, right? Because I was like this like fairly hefty, you know, but in my mind, good looking guy. And I felt like that was like an added bonus. It was like part of my spiel. It was part of the intrigue. It was, a part of my story. And so I used it as such. No, make no doubt about it. I mean, 8 years I was committed to the whole idea. In fact, very much so. Thought it was forever. And so the ideologies attached to it, right, which were that you have to understand, like being a vegan. Now that I look back on it, is is sort of like a secular religion, right? So in place of a religion or a spiritual practice that I subscribed to at the time, that was sort of the replacement. Um, and I didn't realize it at the time that that's what that was, right? It was like I was yearning for a community, a space that I could feel in my element, right? So I would go to, for example, they had like these vegan fairs, like these events. And then I started realizing, like, just aesthetically, I just was not, I wasn't very tied to the community, right? A lot of people were just like really weirdos. And looking back now, I'm like kind of fringe, right? Kind of extreme in their views and also just the way they looked, the way they presented themselves. And it wasn't something that it was really kind of something that I felt I could be a part of, right? So, like I said, I did it for 8 years. I started noticing the differences in terms of just how I felt. And I've always been exploring new ideas. And so I felt that maybe the time to revisit and perhaps even discard the idea of being vegan was something that I let marinate for a while. And I began to do a little bit of thinking, a little bit of internal dialogue. And I started reading religious texts. And I started looking at, well, what was I doing and where did it come from, right? What source was I getting these ideas from, right? The idea of not wanting to eat animals. And so I just that was sort of like the frame of mind I was going into it with. And then eventually you got to understand when it comes to at least that sort of diet and lifestyle, it's very femme, right? It's a feminine way to live, right? And I don't know, as I was getting away from that idea, as I became sort of like aware of what that was, the implications of it, I started really being off put by the whole thing. And then that's when the process started. And then the other thing that sort of took me over the edge, besides just reading about other religions, was getting on Twitter. Believe it or not, that was sort of like the forum, right? It felt like a man cave. I felt like I had finally gotten into a space where I was like, whoa, a lot of similar thinking, a lot of interesting ideas, and in particular in the health space, right? About diet and things of that nature. And then I realized, like, whoa, if you change a man's diet, you can easily, sorry, if you change a man's ideology, you can easily change a man's diet, right? The rest follows through. And so that was where the change happened, right? I started eating, I went back to eating animals again. And now I look back and I think to myself like, wow, it's such a strange thing to want to do to not want to eat animals, especially from the frame of mind I was coming from. But now I feel a lot more comfortable with the idea, and I don't think I'll be going back to that anytime soon, if I'm being honest. So if anybody's on the fence about it, really figure out your belief system, figure out where you lie. The other thing, if I needed any more assurance that I had made the right decision, after I had gone vegan, after I had stopped being vegan, rather, I blew up like 20 pounds. I still worked out when I was vegan, but I didn't realize that I was operating in a deficit because I blew up like 20, like I said, 20 pounds. And the only difference was that I added animals to my diet. That was really the only difference, right? But what a difference it made. Like, I ballooned and I noticed it right away. I was like, whoa, a lot of my clothes wasn't fitting. And it happened so gradually. People started commenting on the look, right? Or on how I was looking. And I just thought it was funny because, you know, it happens slowly. So you don't notice it, but then everybody's bringing it to your attention. And then you realize like, oh, wow. So I guess that was the major shift as well. Was just the physicality of it, right? Just the mere thing of just adding animal products back into my diet after so many years. The other thing was, man, I had a lot of brain fog, and I didn't realize it until after the fact that, like, once I started eating animal products again, like the brain fog kind of just disappeared. Um, and I think that might have something to do with it. There's something about the amino acid profile of being plant based that just after a certain amount of years, you just start to feel the difference. And I don't knock anybody. Like, if you want to try it, you can go ahead and try it. But I feel like the ship has sailed on veganism. Like, I feel like it kind of reached a peak where there was a lot of popularity attached to it. And then I sort of haven't really been seeing that as much. Like, I remember before when I was really in it and I was really trying to proselytize as many people as possible, I did hear a lot of people would like reach out to me and say, hey, I'm going vegan, or I'm interested in going vegan. How should I eat? And then that sort of died down. I haven't had those conversations with anybody for a very long time. So that kind of tells me that um, it's not really a movement that's really growing in popularity. I think it's stagnated, and I think it might, I think it might just stay that way. Because I really thought when I was in it that it was gonna grow and become something massive, and really it's just it kind of looks like a very woke sort of femme, you know, aesthetically unpleasing lifestyle for a man of any sort of constitution, of any sort of foundation that's even remotely um, off put by that whole lifestyle that comes with it. And so I think it does really bring back to this idea of masculinity, right? Where that if you are going to be a vegan, I think it's really hard to convince yourself that you're doing the right thing for yourself. You could argue that, yeah, it is beneficial to not eat animals or to not commit acts of violence against animals, not harm them. But I think at the individual level, you are harming yourself. And like I said, if anybody's still trying it or wants to try it, I'm saying go ahead, give it a go. Like I said, I did it for 8 years. I actually thought it was something I was going to do forever. And so it just goes to show you how anybody can change their mind. Anybody can have new ideas. And I think that is the story, right? Is that you never want to let your ideas stand still. You always want to challenge yourself. And ultimately, if it's for your health and your benefit in that regard, then obviously it is an absolute imperative that you figure it out, right? If you're not feeling well, you need to figure out what you need to tweak, what you need to take out, what you need to add in. And let this be a lesson, right? In not sticking to your guns, right? If something isn't working, then something just isn't working. And you need to be able to adapt, pivot, and move on. And yeah, I hope this helps. I'll see you in the next